The Northern Endeavour decommissioning begins with a $325 million federal government contract. The decommissioning of the Northern Endeavour, a rusted oil production vessel located in the Timor Sea, has begun through a $325 million federal government contract. Energy services company Petrofac is responsible for decommissioning the vessel and the associated oil fields. Disconnecting the vessel from its 9 subsea oil wells and preparing it for towing is part of Phase 1 of the decommissioning process. The offshore oil and gas industry will cover the costs through a levy on petroleum production. Although the operation carries risks, leaving the Northern Endeavour in situ could have significant environmental and economic impacts. Red dust rises again as riders return to Central Australia after grueling off-road race was almost cancelled. The Finke Desert Race is back on track after a tumultuous lead-up. The event almost got cancelled following community opposition to its environmental impact. The iconic off-road race will see thousands of rev heads flocking to Central Australia this weekend. Drivers and riders will navigate some of the most challenging terrains in the world, including red sand dunes, rocky outcrops, and riverbeds. This year, the race will be toughened with new regulations to reduce noise and environmental disturbance. The Finke Desert Race is a proud tradition in Central Australia, bringing tourists and locals together for a thrilling weekend. Building homes for women like Kathy would normally take years. This project got it done in just months. An innovative housing project aimed at tackling Australia's stubborn homelessness crisis has been successfully completed in just a few months. The My Home project, designed to provide safe and affordable housing for vulnerable older women in New South Wales, has been praised for its speed and efficiency. The project saw the construction of 6 fully furnished units, which are now being occupied by women who were previously at risk of homelessness. The success of the My Home project could provide a blueprint for similar initiatives in other parts of the country. Like a loaded gun, who is responsible for keeping kids safe from button batteries? Parents are being urged to remain vigilant after new safety rules failed to prevent 20 children per week being hospitalized in Australia for swallowing button batteries. These tiny batteries, often found in toys and household gadgets, can cause severe burns and even death if ingested. Some campaigners are calling for a boycott of products containing these batteries, while others believe manufacturers should redesign their products to make them less dangerous. Regardless of the solution, it's clear that urgent action is needed to prevent more children being harmed by these deadly batteries. Teenager found guilty of manslaughter in fatal stabbing of 16-year-old boy. An 18-year-old has been found guilty of manslaughter after stabbing 16-year-old Balin Stewart in the heart during a physical altercation outside his Sunshine Coast home in January last year. The accused had previously pleaded not guilty to murder but was convicted on the lesser charge by a Brisbane Supreme Court jury. During the trial, the court heard of long-running tensions between the two boys over a teenage girl. Balin's parents have expressed their devastation over their loss and the trial process. The 18-year-old will be sentenced at a later date. 1 year on from Tamil family's return, home to Bilo campaigners say fight isn't over. The Nadasalingam family's return to Biloela marked a victorious end to a 4-year detention spell. A year later, the Home to Bilo campaigners highlight that the struggle for asylum seekers endures. They argue that Australia's policy on refugees remains flawed, with thousands still stuck in detention centres and offshore processing facilities. The group is calling for greater compassion and humaneness, urging the government to deliver fair treatment to all asylum seekers. The campaigners vow to continue pushing until the plight of refugees is addressed. Title: Port Adelaide secures 10th straight win with a hard-fought victory against Western Bulldogs. Port Adelaide has kept their winning streak alive with a 16.11 107 to 13.7 85 victory over the Western Bulldogs at Docklands. The Bulldogs tried to make a comeback, closing the gap to just 8 points midway through the fourth quarter, but a wonderful steadying goal from Jason Horne-Francis helped Port Adelaide secure the win in front of 23,110 fans. Zach Butters starred with 31 disposals, 11 score involvements, and a goal, while Charlie Dixon marked his return from injury with 4 goals. The Bulldogs were condemned to their third straight defeat, and Marcus Bontempelli may face scrutiny for a high bump on Port Adelaide's Dan Houston. Title: University of Wollongong enlists AI to write a play, resulting in mixed reviews. The University of Wollongong in Australia brought artificial intelligence to the forefront of the theatre industry by commissioning a script entirely written by AI website ChatGPT. The play, titled 10 Strangers in a Room, was then rehearsed by the university's acting students and performed for a paying audience. While the play was coherent, it was also criticized for its generic language and underdeveloped characters. One student actor said, "AI is never going to be able to reflect genuine human emotions, so we are telling, not showing." Nevertheless, the play demonstrated the potential for AI to influence the performing arts. Millions of Australians have a public holiday coming up, but it depends where you live. Australians, get ready for a public holiday. But before you start planning your long weekend, make sure you know exactly when it is, as it varies depending on the state or territory you live in. The King's birthday, also known as the Queen's birthday in some regions, will be celebrated on different dates across the country. This year, it will fall on Monday, June 12, in most states and territories. However, Queensland and Western Australia will have their holidays on different dates. So, check your calendars and enjoy the holiday. Title: PVC granules, a solution to Australia's plastic recycling problem? A Bunbury-based scrap dealer has teamed up with engineers to find an economically viable solution to Australia's plastic waste issue. PVC granules, which resemble cake sprinkles, are proving to be a promising answer. The granules will be tested in an innovative recipe trial where they'll be used to create desalination equipment. The trial could not only improve the country's recycling rate but could also help address water scarcity issues. This partnership is a step in the right direction towards a more sustainable future. Title: Retail giants and police use AI to track down criminals. Retailers and police forces are turning to AI to help catch shoplifters and other criminals. Large retailers such as Walmart and Target have been using AI software called Aurora to help identify potential thieves and to run more efficient operations. The software uses a combination of cameras and sensors to detect suspicious behavior, and then alerts store security staff. The police are also using AI to help with investigations, using facial recognition and other technologies to identify suspects. Critics say that the use of AI raises concerns about privacy and civil liberties. Title: Andre Dau's debut novel challenges the notion of truth in family history. Australian author Andre Dau's debut novel, Annam, delves into his family's diasporic history, spanning across Vietnam, France, the UK, and Australia. Dau's family history involves colonization, war, and displacement, making the concept of truth a complex matter. Dau realized that he had to let go of the notion of truth to tell his family's story accurately. Annam is a thought-provoking novel that challenges the conventions of storytelling, highlighting the significance of authenticity and empathy when it comes to family history. 2. Serious miscarriages of justice, but the Folbig and Chamberlain cases are very different, legal expert says. Legal expert Professor David Hamer said there were serious miscarriages of justice in the cases of both Kathleen Folbig and Lindy Chamberlain. However, he also highlighted major differences between the two cases. While Chamberlain was convicted in the court of public opinion, Folbig was found guilty by the jury. Additionally, Chamberlain's story gained worldwide attention, while Folbig's did not receive as much media coverage. Hamer said it was essential to reflect on these cases to ensure such miscarriages of justice don't occur again. Title: Queensland orchard celebrates record persimmon crop, but few Australians have tried them. Southeast Queensland orchard owners, Rod and Jeanette Dalton, are celebrating their best ever persimmon harvest after years of drought and flooding rains. However, the Daltons are facing a challenge in getting more Australians to try the sweet and crunchy fruit, which is popular in Asia. According to Alison Fuss, Executive Officer of Persimmons Australia, many non-Asian Australians may have had a bad experience with persimmons, eating them before they are ripe and astringent. Although the industry had produced about 3,500 tonnes of persimmons in Australia in the previous year, the majority of the population has never tasted the fruit. Slim Dusty's song, "A Pub with No Beer," was a hit. But which pub is he singing about? The iconic Slim Dusty song, "A Pub with No Beer," has been a beloved classic in Australia for decades. However, the question of which pub inspired the song has long been a mystery, until now. Recent research has revealed that the pub in question was the Day Dawn Hotel in Ingham, Queensland. The pub's former owner, Thomas Brady, had written a poem about the pub running out of beer during a particularly busy period, which inspired the song's lyrics. The Day Dawn Hotel still stands today, a testament to the enduring legacy of this beloved country tune. Title: University students in Sydney and Hong Kong embrace AI learning. University students in Sydney and Hong Kong are embracing generative artificial intelligence, with many hailing it as a useful tool for learning. Advancements in AI have provided students with new ways to study, from writing essays to creating presentations and analyzing data. While some critics argue that AI could lead to cheating, students believe it is simply a way to improve their learning experience. "That's not cheating. That's just learning," one student said. With AI becoming increasingly prevalent in higher education, it is likely that more universities will integrate the technology into their curriculums. Title: Lack of information on buyback land causes North Lismore residents to leave. A lack of detail regarding where new land will be developed is forcing North Lismore residents to leave the area. More than 130 people have been formally offered a government buyback of their flood-affected homes in the Northern Rivers region of New South Wales, but without affordable land or available homes in sight, some have no choice but to leave. The Northern Rivers Reconstruction Corporation's draft Resilient Land Strategy aims to deliver suitable, flood-free land through an investment of $100 million in its Resilient Lands Fund. However, the corporation has not provided specific details on how the scheme would make land affordable. Link. Trial begins for financial advisor accused of stealing more than $1 million from clients' superannuation funds. Mark Sebo, a Perth-based financial advisor, is being tried for allegedly stealing over $1 million from the superannuation accounts of 8 clients to fund his online gambling habit. Sebo has pleaded not guilty to the charges, which include 36 counts of stealing the money over a 10-day period in July and August 2019. The court heard that Sebo was hired by the clients to manage their self-managed superannuation funds, and he only had access to their accounts with their permission. The money had allegedly been transferred to Sebo's personal and business accounts without their permission. Sebo denies the charges. An expert says as Brett Sutton departs, Victorians farewell the face of COVID-related scientific evidence. Victorians are saying farewell to their Chief Health Officer, Brett Sutton, who became the face of the state's COVID-19 response over the past 2 years. Professor Sutton's resignation was announced yesterday, leaving many residents feeling both grateful for his leadership and anxious about the future. Some experts believe his departure could have a negative impact on public trust in COVID-related scientific evidence and government decision-making. Sutton's presence lent a sense of stability in the face of uncertainty, and he was credited with helping the state navigate various outbreaks and lockdowns. Decades-old winemaker pushed into voluntary administration. Cassegrain Wines, one of the largest wineries on the mid-north coast of New South Wales, has been pushed into voluntary administration after suffering significant financial losses due to the COVID-19 pandemic, natural disasters and trade tariffs imposed by China. The winery, which employs over 20 staff, has appointed insolvency firm Shaw Gidley as administrators. Its managing director, John Cassegrain, said the announcement came with a heavy heart after the past 3.5 years had been challenging in the extreme. The administrators will meet virtually with creditors on June 21. The winery will continue to trade as usual in the meantime. Title: NSW's Rental Commissioner faces monumental task. The position of NSW's Rental Commissioner remains unfilled, but the successful applicant is guaranteed a tough challenge. The Commissioner will have to work hard to bring Labour's election promises to life, including the introduction of a rental cap and reforms to the Residential Tenancies Act. Critics warn that the proposed changes could lead to an increase in rental prices and a shortage of available properties. However, supporters argue that these changes are necessary to protect tenants and ensure fairer rental prices. The incoming Rental Commissioner will have their work cut out for them as they navigate the complex world of rental properties and tenant rights. More flying obstetricians promise to help rural Queensland women give birth near home. The Queensland Government has announced that it will expand its team of flying obstetricians and offer more telehealth care to pregnant women in rural areas to help them give birth closer to home. The state's health minister, Shannon Fentiman, said the $42 million funding injection would reduce the need for pregnant women to travel due to staff shortages. The government will also work with midwives, obstetricians and women in regional communities to implement the right model of care for each area, and offer financial incentives to encourage medical practitioners to move to regional Queensland. Liz Wilkes from My Midwives welcomed the investment but called for more widespread system change. Jury retires to decide whether Canberra man murdered love of his life, who allegedly fell from car bonnet. A jury is deliberating a verdict on the alleged murder of Danielle Jordan, who died from catastrophic head injuries after falling from Michael O'Connell's car bonnet. O'Connell pleaded not guilty and testified he did not start driving until Ms. Jordan got off the car. Prosecutors argued that O'Connell's intention was to keep going at speed until Ms. Jordan was dislodged. The defense argued that the prosecution failed to prove its case beyond reasonable doubt. A 13-year-old witness testified that she saw O'Connell driving the car with Ms. Jordan on the bonnet. The jury's verdict is awaited. Former PM Scott Morrison's $4 million grant to Esther Foundation likely unlawful, ANAO finds. Former Prime Minister Scott Morrison's 2019 grant of $4 million to the Esther Foundation, a Christian rehabilitation facility, was likely unlawful, according to a report by the Australian National Audit Office. The facility closed last year following abuse allegations. Former residents of the facility claimed that they were deterred from speaking out about the allegations after Morrison personally visited the centre. Women who spoke out said they were not surprised by the findings. Multiple claims of sexual assault, gay conversion therapy, forcible restraint, and unqualified pharmaceutical treatment emerged from a Western Australian government inquiry launched after former residents spoke out in the media last year. Title: It Takes a Village, the price we pay to keep our kids in sport. Parents across Australia are struggling to keep up with the cost of their children's sporting activities. A new strategy is being rolled out to ensure that all kids have access to sport, regardless of their family's income. The initiative aims to provide financial assistance for registration fees, equipment, and transport. It also encourages local communities to get involved by volunteering their time and resources. As one parent notes, it takes a village to raise a child, and it takes a village to keep them in sport. This program recognizes the importance of physical activity for children and aims to make it accessible to all. Title: Tamboran Resources eyes middle arm for LNG plant. Gas company Tamboran Resources is proposing to establish a liquefied natural gas (LNG) plant at Middle Arm in Darwin, with an initial capacity of 6.6 million tonnes of LNG and the potential for expansion. The facility would be used to export fracked gas from the Beetaloo Basin. Tamboran is one of 5 companies the Northern Territory government has committed land to at its Middle Arm development. The NT government has positioned the precinct as a sustainable development site for renewable energy and manufacturing. If sanctioned by 2026, the plant's first volumes could be operational by 2030. Housing market cools across New South Wales, with regional areas recording steepest drop. New South Wales regional areas saw a decline of nearly 10% in house prices in the past year, despite remaining relatively expensive compared to pre-pandemic levels, according to CoreLogic data. Housing markets also cooled in capital cities, with Sydney's experiencing an 8.2% fall in the same period. It comes after a meteoric increase in house prices during the pandemic, with record high prices reached in May 2022. CoreLogic's head of research, Tim Lawless, attributed the trend to more people moving from regional areas to Sydney, as well as rising interest rates. Demand for support doubles amid cost of living crisis, nonprofit says. A cost of living crisis has led to unprecedented demand for charity support services across Australia. With the cost of vital goods rising dramatically, single mother Ebony is increasingly turning to non-profits for help. Ebony is not alone, and Treasure Boxes, which supports disadvantaged children and their families, is experiencing a huge influx of demand. Chief Executive Officer and founder Ricky Cook has said that the strain on families is so great that the group is running out of donations. SACOSS has warned that most non-profit support groups are being overwhelmed by an increase in the number of people seeking assistance. Title: Taronga Zoo to pay $2.6 million in back pay to casual workers. Taronga Zoo has announced that it owes $2.6 million to 902 current and former casual staff members who were underpaid due to a payroll system error. The underpayment spans 6 years and was only identified after a new payroll system was implemented in February 2021. Back pay will begin in July and will include interest and superannuation. Taronga CEO Cameron Kerr apologised for the error and said they would correct the payroll system configuration from July 13. However, the Australian Workers' Union, who pushed for an audit, said the error would not have been identified if it had not taken action. 2 Australian East Coast cities were rattled by earthquakes. Were they linked? 2 earthquakes hit the country's east coast within hours of each other. A magnitude 4.2 quake struck off the coast of Cairns on Thursday night, followed by tremors in the northern New South Wales town of Grafton 4 hours later. No serious damage or injuries have been reported. Experts are now investigating whether the 2 earthquakes were linked. This occurrence follows the recent announcement of a $50 million grant by the Australian federal government to help improve the country's earthquake monitoring network. Person killed in Adelaide house fire, another taken to hospital. A house fire in Adelaide's northwestern suburbs has left 1 person dead and another in hospital. Emergency services rushed to the scene on Murray Street at Angle Park after a 000 call was made just before 2:30 p.m. A female resident was taken to the Royal Adelaide Hospital with minor injuries, while the body of another person was found at the scene. The cause of the fire is yet to be determined, with MFS and SA police investigators having attended the property. Anyone who may have witnessed suspicious activity at the scene has been urged to call Crime Stoppers on 1-800-333-000. Australian authorities on alert as Sikh Hindu tensions over Khalistan separatist movement boil over in Sydney. Authorities in Australia are on high alert as tensions between the Sikh and Hindu communities have erupted in Sydney over the vote intended to garner political support for an independent Sikh state in India. The Khalistan separatist movement has long been a source of tensions between these communities, with the Sikh diaspora in Australia being a major player in supporting the movement. The police have increased their presence in the area and are urging both sides to remain calm. The Australian government has also issued a statement calling for peaceful resolution and respect for the rule of law. Victorian coroner finds Mayumi Spencer, 29, died of a cocaine overdose, but also can't rule out manslaughter. The death of Mayumi Spencer in a Docklands apartment in January 2015 has been the subject of findings by Victorian coroner John Cain. Spencer's husband, respiratory and sleep physician Peter Spencer, attempted to cut open his wife's airway with a kitchen knife and waited over 3 hours to call an ambulance. The coronial findings state that Spencer died of a cocaine overdose, but Kane cannot determine if she may have survived if emergency services were called sooner. The coroner has referred his report to the Department of Prosecutions. The couple had a history of family violence. Perth man accused of raping women he met on dating sites granted bail, as court hears there could be more victims. Perth man Michael John McConaughtey has been accused of sexually assaulting 3 women he allegedly met through Bumble, Tinder, and Hinge. The 27-year-old was granted bail under strict conditions, including a ban from using dating apps and posting on social media. McConaughtey faces multiple charges including sexual penetration without consent, threatening to distribute an intimate image, and recording a private activity using a mobile phone. According to police, the investigation is ongoing, and there is a possibility that more victims may come forward. McConaughtey is due back in court at the end of the month. Title: French president visits wounded toddlers in hospital after Annecy knife attack. French President Emmanuel Macron visited the families of 4 toddlers who were stabbed in a park in Annecy. The children, aged between 22 months and 3 years old, are now in a stable condition following emergency surgery. Macron and his wife Brigitte went to a Grenoble hospital where 3 of the children were receiving treatment. The 4th child was admitted to a hospital in Geneva, Switzerland. The alleged attacker, a 31-year-old Syrian man, is currently in police custody and is being evaluated by psychiatrists. French authorities said that his motives do not appear to be terrorism-related. Title: Australia to impose mandatory waste rules on packaging industry following failure of voluntary targets. The Australian packaging industry will be required to adhere to new regulations to reduce waste production following the collapse of voluntary targets. Federal and state environment ministers have agreed that manufacturers must comply with new design standards limiting waste from the outset, including recycled content, to diminish the amount of landfill. There will also be rules for chemicals in food packaging to decrease the use of dangerous substances. The Australian Packaging Covenant Organisation recently admitted it would fail 4 voluntary targets, including transitioning to 100% reusable, recyclable, or compostable packaging by 2025. The regulations will help to prevent the mistakes of the failed Red Cycle scheme. Hashtags. Title: Heavy fighting reported in southern Ukraine as Kyiv remains silent. Russia and Ukraine have reported heavy fighting in southern and eastern Ukraine, with Kyiv remaining silent about its long-anticipated counterattack. The two sides have been reporting heavy fighting in the front lines, and Kyiv claims that Russian saboteurs were behind the dam attack. Meanwhile, the Kremlin says flood victims have been killed by shelling. Russia has had months to prepare its defensive lines, while Ukraine's counteroffensive is expected to involve thousands of Ukrainian troops trained and equipped by the West. As of this report, independent reporting has been limited, and the situation remains tense with heavy fighting continuing. Title: 5 Things We Learnt at the WTC Final, Green's Screamer and Marnus nods off. Australia's Cam Green pulled off a sensational catch to dismiss India's Ajinkya Rahane on Day 3 of the ICC World Test Championship final. Green's diving effort, which saw him pluck the ball out of the air, turned the game in his team's favour. Meanwhile, Marnus Labuschagne was caught napping on the oval balcony, with cameras capturing him asleep during the match. Here are 5 takeaways from Day 3 of the WTC final. Title: Greta Thunberg graduates high school and stages her final climate protest. Swedish activist Greta Thunberg, who inspired the global climate action movement Fridays for Future, has graduated high school and staged her final protest outside the Swedish Parliament building. Despite no longer being a student, Thunberg vowed to continue protesting, saying that the fight has only just begun. The environmental activist has spoken at UN conferences and the World Economic Forum and was named Time magazine's Youngest Person of the Year. Thunberg urged the media to focus on other young activists and their efforts in the fight against climate change. Indigenous group in Indonesia requests internet blackout to minimize online world's negative impact. The Badui community, an indigenous group of 26,000 people in Java's Banten province, has requested an internet blackout in their area to minimize the negative impact of the online world on their way of life. The group argues that telecommunication towers built near their area could threaten their way of life and the morals of young people. The inner group asked authorities to shut down internet reception or divert nearby telecom towers so the signal would not reach them. The request is a part of their efforts to minimize the negative impact of smartphones on their people. UN's World Food Programme suspends food aid in Ethiopia amid fears of aid diversion by military. The United Nations World Food Programme (WFP) has suspended food aid in Ethiopia due to widespread theft of donations. The United States also stopped providing aid for the same reason. Over 20 million people in Ethiopia require food assistance, mainly due to a severe drought and a 2-year conflict in northern Ethiopia that killed tens of thousands of people. The WFP has provided aid to 7 million people affected by the crises. Although the reason for the aid diversion is unclear, an internal briefing from foreign donors suggests that food has been diverted to Ethiopian military units. The Ethiopian government has promised to investigate the matter. Title: Jarrod Croker's 300th NRL game ends in loss to New Zealand Warriors. Canberra Raiders' Jarrod Croker was hoping for a fairy-tale ending to his 300th NRL game, but the New Zealand Warriors had other plans. Despite a valiant effort from Croker, who scored 2 tries, the Raiders fell short to the Warriors 22-16. The match was a nail-biter until the very end, with both teams fighting hard for the win. Croker's milestone game may not have resulted in a victory, but he can still hold his head high for reaching such a significant achievement. Fighting kills at least 20 in South Sudan displaced people's camp. At least 20 people have been killed and over 50 injured in clashes among displaced people in a camp in Upper Nile State's capital. The fighting started after an altercation between women from different groups at a water point last week. Full-blown clashes erupted when a man was killed, leading to the deaths and injuries. The camp, hosting 50,000 people, was opened in 2013 when civil war broke out in the country. While a peace deal was signed in 2018, lower-level clashes continue to flare up in areas with resource disputes. Nuclear secrets on documents seized, prosecutors unseal Trump indictment ahead of court date. Prosecutors unseal an indictment against Donald Trump, accusing the former U.S. president of risking some of the country's most sensitive secrets with his handling of classified documents after leaving the White House in 2021. Trump has been charged with violating the Espionage Act, a law that criminalizes the unauthorized disclosure of national defense information. The indictment alleges that Trump disclosed the secrets by sharing them with foreign leaders and through his private conversations with them. Trump has denied the charges and is expected to appear in court soon. Link. Boris Johnson standing down from UK Parliament. Former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has announced his resignation from Parliament. This decision prompts a by-election in the prominent lawmaker's marginal seat. Johnson's resignation takes effect immediately, leaving his constituency without representation. The former PM's decision to step down follows several high-profile disagreements with current Conservative Party leadership. Title: Political fallout from Ipswich Hospital miscarriage incident risks Queensland's chance at real health reform. Queensland's health system is under intense scrutiny after a young woman's treatment at Ipswich Hospital made headlines. Despite being 12 weeks pregnant, the woman was forced to wait for more than 4 hours before being treated, which resulted in a miscarriage. The incident highlights the challenges faced by the Queensland health system, which has been plagued by reports of substandard care, lengthy wait times, and staff shortages. As political leaders trade barbs, experts warn that isolated incidents could overshadow the need for genuine reform, including increased funding and better staffing. Pair rescued from floodwater in Victoria's north after driving into what they thought was a large puddle. 2 men were rescued from floodwater in Victoria's north after their car became bogged down close to the rising waters of Seven Creeks. The people were standing on top of their vehicle when the boat picked them up and brought them back to safety. The rescue is a timely reminder of the flood risk this long weekend. With heavy rain over the last week, flood warnings are still in place for northern, central, and eastern parts of Victoria. The State Emergency Service urged drivers to avoid driving into floodwater.